So, Matthew chapter 10. And he called to him his 12 disciples, and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out, to throw them out, and to heal every disease and every affliction. The names of the 12 apostles are these. First Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out, instructing them, including Judas Iscariot, who betrayed them, "Go nowhere among the Gentiles, enter no town of the Samaritans, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and proclaim as you go, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, throw out demons. You received without paying, give without pay." In other words, gang, when you're doing your ministry or whatever the case, and you're caring for people, do it without the expectation or the prerequisite of receiving pay. Now, if somebody chooses to bless you, that's great. You should not muzzle the ox while it is treading out the grain. You should take care of the things that do work for you and that help you and bless you. But you shouldn't go with a chip on your shoulder with an expectation, because there's no guarantee. Acquire no gold or silver or copper for your belts, no bag for your journey, or 2 tunics or sandals or a staff, for the laborer deserves his food. In whatever town or village you enter, first find out who is worthy in it, and stay there until you depart. Don't go and stay with somebody who is not worthy. Ask Father, Son, and Holy Spirit to show you who is worthy. Like, actually connect with them. Actually slow down. Actually take stock of who you're connecting with. And not just, oh, well, this is automatically of God. You don't know that. You need to connect with people. You need to get to know them. You need to feel them out, connect, interact, share a little bit of stuff before you say, yes, I'm going to bed down here. And as you enter the house of the person who is worthy, greet it. It doesn't just say greet him, it says greet it, greet the house. Which means we can greet houses and buildings and places. And if the house is worthy, not just the person, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. And if anyone will not receive you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet when you leave that house or town. Your job is not to try to persuade and argue somebody into the kingdom. Your job is to hand them the good news, do the work. If they choose to receive it, great. If they choose to resist it, have a conversation if Father leads you into a little bit of a dispute. But after that, move along. Your job is not to act as though you have blood on your hands because you didn't argue with everybody that you came into contact with, trying to argue them into the kingdom. Because anybody you can argue into the kingdom, you can argue right out of the kingdom.
Say the same would go for anyone you're speaking to prophetically, or if the Lord gives you a word for somebody, you give it, and you don't look at their reaction.
Correct.
You look at the Lord. If somebody rejects what you're giving, what really they're rejecting is Him. You may feel the rejection. I've given words that got rejected, and I felt the rejection keenly, and it hurt a lot. And it's something I've had to work through with the Lord. But the rejection, the vast majority of the time, is rejecting the Lord, not you. And even if it is rejecting you, if you're doing what the Lord asked you to do, it doesn't, whether people accept it or not, He is the one we serve. His kingdom is what we're building. Now, if we're in our flesh, if we're just, blah, 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 and people are rejecting us, that's different. You know when there's a word from the Lord and when the word's not from the Lord. But when He's telling you to do something, you cannot judge its success or failure by whether people accept it or reject it. You've got to judge the success and failure by what you're sowing per the Lord. He will bring the harvest. That's His job, not ours. It's important to remember.
Truly I say to you, it will be more bearable on that day of judgment for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah than for that town. If you go on a mission to speak to people, to bless people, to be life-giving to them, and they flat out reject you, your job is not to fret about it. Your job is to move along. As hard as it might be, your job is to move along. Behold, I am sending you as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. There's a level of shrewdness in sharing the gospel that you need to execute on, and there is a level of innocence in the deliverance of the gospel that you need to execute on as well. Both, simultaneously, together. The job is neither to be a used car salesman nor an innocent person who's being persecuted because you stood for the truth. Really? Your job is to carry wisdom in execution and purity of motive in execution. David shepherded Israel in one of the Psalms, as it says, with integrity of heart and with skillful hands. He was wise as a serpent. He was innocent as a dove. So, make sure in your connection with people that you're walking in both wisdom and innocence. You need wisdom and innocence. You need shrewdness, honestly, and innocence. So, those are my thoughts. Is there anything to add there from your end? Further or no?
Let me illustrate the shrewdness and innocence with a story you guys might be familiar with since he pulled David, because I think David walked it really well. If you recall, there were several times before David was king that Saul and an army went and hunted David and his little band down. And there was a couple of opportunities that David had where he could have killed the king very easily. The incident in the cave, when he actually cut the edge of the robe off of he cut the edge of Saul's robe. He could have killed him very easily. He did not, because he honored God. So he was wise. He didn't just go out and reveal himself and put himself right in front of Saul, and he was shrewd. He wanted to prove his innocence. He was so cared about him proving himself to Saul. Maybe a little too much, but he still walked in that balance. Or even when the Lord put the army in a sound sleep, and his number one counselor said to him, "The Lord put the army in a sleep and delivered him into your hands." And that's exactly what it looked like. It looked like the Lord delivered the army into his hands and wanted him to kill Saul. But David listened to the Lord, had his eyes on the Lord, knew the principles, and followed the principles, did not kill Saul, but again, took the opportunity to take something that was right near his head, bring it out. So shrewd, wise, left the camp, went up on the hill, and shouted out, "Yo, man, hey, Saul, look at what I have. Look where I just was." And so he was innocent he was completely innocent in his approach, but he was also wise and shrewd. So that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wisdom in execution, shrewdness in execution, innocence in execution. So, those are just some thoughts, gang. Bless y'all.